I'm Natalie, 27 years old, and never did I think my entire family would disown me over $900. At that tax auction, when I spotted that condemned property, all I could see was potential and my chance at home ownership. My parents and my sister Amanda, they saw it completely differently. They expected me to contribute $1,500 to Amanda's yoga retreat in Bali. When I chose the house, my mother looked at me with pure disgust. "Then live like junk," she spat. "You have shamed this family. If you are watching this video right now, I would love to know where you're tuning in from." Drop your location in the comments below. Hit that like button and subscribe to follow my journey from family outcast to homeowner. Trust me, this story has an ending you will not want to miss. Growing up in suburban Chicago, I learned early that nothing comes easy. My parents, Robert and Diana, they always struggled financially, yet somehow always found money for my younger sister's dance classes, her summer camps, and later her college tuition. Meanwhile, I was the one working at the local grocery store at 16, stocking shelves before school and on weekends. When I graduated high school, no college fund was waiting for me. "You are smart, Natalie. You will figure it out," my father said, patting my shoulder. And figure it out. I did. I enrolled in community college while juggling two jobs: morning shifts at a coffee shop and evening work as a restaurant hostess. Every semester was a struggle to pay tuition, but I never missed a single payment. After 3 exhausting years, I earned my associate degree in paralegal studies. Not the law degree I had dreamed about as a child, but a practical choice given my circumstances. I found work at Goldstein and Associates, a small law firm that specialized in real estate law. The starting salary was modest, but it offered a stability I had never known growing up. For 5 years, I lived in a tiny studio apartment with secondhand furniture, carefully tracking every single dollar. There were no vacations, no eating out, no new clothes unless it was absolutely necessary. My coworkers often invited me to happy hours or weekend trips, but I always declined with a smile and a vague excuse. Eventually, they stopped asking. Every month, I transferred money to my savings account, watching it grow slowly but steadily. $15,000 after 5 years might not sound impressive to some, but to me, it represented countless sacrifices and unwavering discipline. That money was my future, my security, my proof that I could break the cycle of financial instability I had witnessed all my life. Meanwhile, my family continued their pattern of poor financial choices. My father cycled through jobs, always quitting whenever a boss disrespected him. My mother maintained appearances with credit cards, buying new furniture when the old set was perfectly fine. And Amanda, my younger sister by 3 years, just floated through life expecting doors to open for her. Amanda had always been the golden child. Pretty, charming, and always ready with a hug or a compliment. She knew exactly how to win people over. Our parents indulged her every whim, from horseback riding lessons to a semester abroad in Spain that they could not afford. After college, she worked briefly at a marketing firm before deciding corporate life was crushing her spirit. She quit to find herself bouncing between yoga instructor training, crystal healing workshops, and meditation retreats. My tiny apartment became my sanctuary. It was a fourth-floor walk-up with unreliable heat and a bathroom so small I could barely turn around in it. But it was mine. Or at least the space I rented was mine. I decorated it with plants and colorful throw pillows from thrift stores. I installed floating shelves for my growing collection of home improvement books. Every night I fell asleep watching DIY renovation shows on my laptop. I marveled at the transformations, ordinary people turning neglected properties into beautiful homes. I studied their techniques, learning about load-bearing walls, electrical systems, and the proper way to install tile. My browser history filled with tutorials on everything from patching drywall to refinishing hardwood floors. Homeownership seemed like an impossible dream in Chicago's expensive market, but I was determined to find a way. I researched first-time home buyer programs and down payment assistance, but even with help, the numbers did not work with my salary. That was when I stumbled across an article about tax auctions and foreclosures. At these auctions, properties were sold for pennies on the dollar. Of course, there was a catch, or several. Many had serious structural issues, tax liens, or unclear titles. Some required immediate repairs just to meet code requirements. It was risky, but the more I researched, the more convinced I became that this could be my path to homeownership. For months, I attended auctions just to observe and learn the process. I studied the successful bidders, noting which properties generated interest and which ones everyone avoided. I researched neighborhoods, property values, and development plans. I learned about renovation permits, building codes, and the true cost of major repairs. Then one Tuesday morning, while scrolling through upcoming auction listings during my lunch break, I saw it. A small single-family home in a transitional neighborhood on the west side. The opening bid was set at just $900. $900 for an entire house. My heart raced as I looked through the sparse details and grainy photos. Built in the 1940s, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, currently uninhabitable. I closed my laptop and sat very still, my mind racing with possibilities. This could be it, my chance. With trembling fingers, I marked the auction date on my calendar and requested the day off work. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of genuine excitement about my future. The house looked worse in person than in the photos, which was really saying something. Paint peeled from the siding like dead skin. The sagging porch threatened to collapse under my careful steps. Windows were boarded up or broken, and the small front yard had become a jungle of weeds tall enough to brush my waist. I cupped my hands against a dirty window and peered inside. The interior was a complete disaster. Water-stained ceilings, floors buckling from moisture damage, walls with gaping holes that revealed rotted studs. Judging by the scattered debris and distinctive smell, a raccoon had clearly been living in what was once the kitchen. "You really want to bid on this place?" asked Marcus, the city inspector who had agreed to meet me there. He had handled some real estate closings at our law firm, and I had helped him with paperwork enough times that he owed me a favor. "I know it looks bad," I admitted. "Bad, honey." I admitted, "Bad, honey." "This is condemned for a reason," he said. "The roof needs replacing. Plumbing probably needs to be redone entirely. Electrical is definitely not up to code. And I'm guessing there's asbestos in the walls and lead in the paint?" I nodded, cataloging each issue and mentally calculating costs. "What about the foundation?" Marcus walked around the perimeter, studying the concrete. "Surprisingly decent. Some settling, but no major cracks that I can see." "That's something, at least." I called my friend Darren, who worked as a contractor, and he joined us an hour later. He whistled low as he surveyed the property. "You got guts, Nat. This is a serious project." But he walked through the rooms, testing floors with his foot and examining the ceiling. "Bones aren't terrible. Good ceiling height. There's original hardwood under this awful carpet. The layout makes sense." By the end of our inspection, I had 8 pages of notes and a preliminary estimate that made my stomach flip. Even doing much of the work myself, I would need at least $12,000 for critical repairs just to make it habitable. That was almost my entire savings, and that didn't include any aesthetic improvements. But I also learned the neighborhood was showing early signs of revitalization. A craft brewery had opened 3 blocks away. A farm-to-table restaurant was under construction nearby. Young families were starting to buy and renovate the more intact homes on adjacent streets. For the next week, I researched everything about the property. I confirmed there were no outstanding liens beyond the unpaid taxes. I verified the zoning would allow me to live there while renovating. I checked city plans for the area and found proposals for improved lighting, repaved sidewalks, and a small park within walking distance. Then came the family dinner that changed everything. My mother had insisted I come over on Sunday. "Family dinner is mandatory," she said, her tone leaving no room for negotiation. I arrived to find my father watching football while my mother prepared her signature lasagna. Amanda swept in 20 minutes late, air-kissing everyone and filling the room with the scent of expensive perfume. "You will never believe what happened," Amanda announced as we sat down to eat. "I got accepted to the Sacred Spirit Yoga Immersion in Bali. It is the most exclusive retreat. Only 20 people worldwide were chosen." My parents cooed with admiration. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," my mother said, serving Amanda the largest portion of lasagna. "When do you leave?" "In 6 weeks. It's a month-long program with the most amazing teachers." We will be staying in eco-huts on the beach practicing sunrise yoga and learning ancient healing techniques. Amanda's eyes shone with excitement. The only thing is, it costs $3,000, not including airfare. I nearly choked on my water. $3,000 for yoga on a beach. That was more than 3 months of my rent. Well, my father said slowly, "That's a lot of money, princess." Amanda's face fell dramatically. "I knew you would say that. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for my spiritual growth, and all you care about is money." My mother reached over to pat her hand. "No one is saying you cannot go, sweetheart. We will figure it out, right, Robert?" My father sighed, but nodded. "Of course, we will." Actually, my mother continued, turning to me with a smile that did not reach her eyes, "I thought perhaps all of us could contribute. If Natalie and your dad and I each put in $1,000, we can make it happen." I set my fork down carefully. "You want me to give Amanda $1,000 for a yoga retreat?" $1,500, actually, my mother corrected. "Your father and I can only manage $1,500 together with his hours being cut back at work." Amanda reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "It would mean the world to me, Nat, and it's an investment in my future. I might even be able to become a certified international yoga instructor after this." I pulled my hand away gently. "Amanda, I'm saving for something important." "More important than your sister's dream?" My mother's voice had an edge now. I took a deep breath. "I found a house at an auction. I'm going to bid on it next week." Silence fell over the table. Then my father laughed. "A house? In Chicago? With what money?" "The opening bid is $900, I explained, then hurried to continue as I saw their expressions. "It needs work, a lot of work, but I've been researching and planning. I can do much of the renovation myself. The neighborhood is improving, and in a few years, $900 for a house?" My mother interrupted. "What kind of house costs $900? It must be falling down." "It's a fixer-upper," I admitted. "A fixer-upper," Amanda laughed. "You mean a total disaster?" "You don't know anything about renovation. I've been studying, and I have connections through work who can help me." My mother set her wineglass down hard enough that red liquid sloshed over the rim. "So instead of helping your sister achieve her dreams, you want to waste your money on some condemned property that will probably be bulldozed anyway." "It is not a waste," I insisted, feeling my face grow hot. "It's an investment in my future, in financial independence." Independence. Financial independence?" My mother repeated mockingly. "Listen to you, always so practical and boring. And meanwhile, your sister is trying to follow her passion." "My passion is having a home of my own," I said quietly. "Something no one can take away from me." Deteriorated from there. By dessert, the battle lines were clearly drawn. My sister alternated between guilt-tripping and belittling my dream. My mother grew increasingly sharp, listing all the reasons my plan would fail. My father mostly stayed silent, occasionally attempting to change the subject. I left early, driving home with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. For a moment, I considered giving in, writing Amanda a check and forgetting about the house. Peace with my family versus an uncertain gamble on a dilapidated building. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling of my tiny apartment, I made my decision. For once in my life, I would choose myself. The morning of the auction, I woke before my alarm, my stomach churning with equal parts excitement and terror. I dressed carefully in my most professional outfit, a navy blue blazer over a white blouse and black slacks, hoping to project a confidence I did not feel. The auction was held in a fluorescent-lit room at the County Administration Building. About 30 people milled around, most in business attire with clipboards or tablets. Developers, investors, and a few individuals like me, hoping to find opportunity in properties others had abandoned. I registered and received my bidder number, a plastic paddle with the number 43. I found a seat in the back row and reviewed my notes one more time. Maximum bid, $1,500. Not a penny more, regardless of how heated the bidding might become. The auctioneer, a man with a rapid-fire speaking style and no patience for hesitation, began the proceedings precisely at 9:00 a.m. The first several properties went quickly, most selling to bidders who barely lifted their paddles before claiming their prizes. Commercial lots, well-maintained single-family homes in desirable areas, a small apartment building, all attracted significant interest and sold for tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. My hands grew damp as the auctioneer approached lot number 37, my house. When he announced the address, I held my breath, certain that professional investors would recognize the potential I had seen. Starting bid $900. Do I have $900? I raised my paddle with a trembling hand. $900 from number 43. Do I have $1,000? I scanned the room waiting for the inevitable competing bid. The seconds stretched painfully. $900. Going once, going twice. I could not believe it. No one else was bidding. Sold for $900 to bidder number 43. A rush of adrenaline made my ears ring. I had done it. I owned a house. I owned a house. For less than the cost of a decent couch, I had become a property owner. The paperwork took longer than the actual purchase. I signed document after document, paid the $900 plus fees, and received a packet containing the deed and tax information. The clerk explained I had 30 days to address the most critical code violations before the city would conduct an inspection. I floated through the rest of the day in a daze, alternating between elation and panic. That evening, I drove to my parents' house for our usual Sunday dinner, the folder of property documents tucked into my bag. Despite our disagreement the previous week, I hoped they might be happy for me, or at least accept my decision. I could not have been more wrong. You actually went through with it. My mother's voice rose in disbelief when I shared my news. You bought a condemned house instead of helping your sister. Mom, it's my money, I said, trying to stay calm. And this is important to me. More important than family? Amanda asked, tears welling in her eyes. I needed you, Nat. This retreat could have changed my life. This house will change my life, I countered. I'm sorry about your retreat, but you'll find another opportunity. My father, who had been silently pushing food around his plate, finally spoke. How bad is this place, really? I pulled out my phone to show him photos. It needs work, but... My mother snatched the phone from my hands and gasped as she swiped through the images. This is not a house, Natalie. This is a death trap. Are those actual holes in the ceiling? Yes, but you chose this junk heap over your sister's spiritual growth. Then she passed the phone to my father, who winced as he looked at the pictures. It's not just about Amanda's retreat, I tried to explain. This is about my future financial security, building equity instead of paying rent. Building equity? My mother laughed harshly. You'll be lucky if that place doesn't collapse on your head. What do you know about renovation? You can barely hang a picture frame. The argument escalated from there. My mother's voice grew shriller with each exchange. Amanda cried openly, accusing me of always being selfish and uncaring. My father mostly remained silent, occasionally attempting to moderate, but ultimately siding with them. You have always been like this, my mother finally snapped, cold, calculating. No wonder you don't have friends or a boyfriend. All you care about is money and your precious independence. Her words cut deep, but I forced myself to stay composed. That's not fair. I have worked hard for everything I have, while Amanda has just lounged around. My mother stood up, her hands pressed against the table. She has dreams, Natalie, passion. All you have is a spreadsheet and now a worthless property that you will pour money into until you're bankrupt. At least I will have tried to build something, I replied, standing as well, instead of expecting others to fund my lifestyle. My mother's face darkened. Foo. If you think that junk house is more important than your family, then go live in your junk. See how far independence gets you when you need help. Diana, my father cautioned, but she waved him off. No, Robert, she has made her choice. She chose garbage over her sister's happiness. She turned back to me, eyes flashing. Then live like junk. You have shamed this family with your selfishness. I looked to my father, hoping for support, but he averted his eyes. Amanda sobbed dramatically into her napkin. I think you should leave, my mother continued. And don't bother coming back until you have sorted out your priorities. The silence that followed was deafening. I gathered my things with shaking hands, dignity the only thing keeping me upright. You're making a mistake, Amanda called after me as I headed for the door. That house will ruin you, and we will not be there to pick up the pieces. I paused at the threshold. I never asked you to pick up the pieces. All I wanted was for you to believe in me. I drove away from my childhood home with tears blurring my vision. The full weight of what had just happened pressed against my chest like a stone. I had been disowned over $900 in a dilapidated house. The family I had always tried to please, even as I forged my own path, had cast me out for choosing my dream over my sister's. With nowhere else to go, I drove to my new property. I parked in the weed-choked driveway and sat staring at the dark shape of the house against the twilight sky. My house. The enormity of the challenge ahead suddenly seemed overwhelming. I had already given notice at my apartment, planning to stay with my parents for a few weeks while making the house minimally habitable. That option was now gone. I had 2 weeks before I needed to vacate my apartment and no place to live in the meantime. That night, I slept in my car parked outside my uninhabitable house. I reclined the driver's seat as far as it would go and covered myself with the emergency blanket from my trunk. As I drifted off to an uneasy sleep, tears slid down my temples and into my hair. But beneath the hurt and fear, a small, stubborn flame of determination continued to burn. I would make this work. I had to. The next morning, I woke stiff and disoriented, momentarily confused by the sight of my own breath fogging the car windows. Reality came crashing back, the house, the family fights, sleeping in my car. I sat up, wincing at the crick in my neck, and looked at my property in the harsh morning light. It seemed even more daunting than before. I called in sick to work, something I had never done without legitimate illness, and drove to a nearby diner for breakfast and to formulate a plan. Over endless cups of coffee, I created a detailed timeline and budget on my laptop. First priority, making one room secure and minimally habitable within 2 weeks. After breakfast, I drove to the nearest hardware store and spent $300 on essential supplies. Heavy-duty trash bags, work gloves, dust masks, a shop vacuum, basic tools, cleaning supplies, and a padlock for the front door. I returned to the house, ready to tackle the first step, clearing out the garbage. For 3 days straight, I worked from dawn until dusk, filling bag after bag with debris, rotted furniture, sodden cardboard, animal droppings, moldy clothing. The previous owners had left behind a staggering amount of junk. Each trip to the dumpster felt like a small victory, revealing more of the house's actual structure. On the 4th day, I discovered the first major problem. What I had thought was a water stain on the living room ceiling was actually extensive roof damage. When I poked at it gently with a broom handle, chunks of plaster crashed down, nearly hitting me. Looking up through the hole, I could see daylight. The entire roof would need replacing before the rainy season. I called Darren in a panic. "Take a breath, Nat," he advised after I finished explaining. "Roofs are expensive, but we can patch it temporarily. I can stop by this weekend to help." True to his word, Darren arrived early Saturday morning with tarps and roofing supplies. He taught me how to identify load-bearing walls, safely remove damaged materials, and create temporary patches for the worst leaks. By Sunday evening, the house was at least protected from the elements. With my apartment lease ending, I focused on making the smallest bedroom habitable. I scrubbed the walls and floors with a bleach solution, sealed gaps in the windows with caulk and plastic sheeting, and rigged up a space heater to a functioning outlet. It was far from comfortable, but it would keep me from sleeping in my car. My boss, Mr. Goldstein, noticed my exhaustion when I returned to work. When I reluctantly explained my situation, he surprised me with unexpected kindness. "My daughter renovated a fixer-upper last year," he said. "Take Fridays off for the next month, paid leave. Just make it up by handling the Westfield closing when you're back to normal hours." That small kindness almost brought me to tears. With Fridays free and weekends dedicated entirely to the house, I made steady progress. Frozen, when your best. I learned to handle a reciprocating saw to remove damaged drywall, how to cap leaking pipes, and the basics of electrical safety. Still, setbacks mounted. The ancient plumbing crumbled when I attempted to restore water service. The electrical panel needed complete replacement to meet code. Termites had damaged significant portions of the floor joists in the kitchen. Each discovery depleted my savings faster than anticipated. To generate additional income, I took on freelance paralegal work on evenings and weekends, preparing legal documents for attorneys in my network. I also delivered food for an app-based service 3 nights a week after my regular job. My social life, already minimal, disappeared entirely. Every spare dollar a minute went into the house. The neighbors, initially wary of the single woman tackling such a massive project alone, gradually became curious, then supportive. Mrs. Hernandez from next door brought me homemade tamales and advice about dealing with the city inspector. Mr. Peterson across the street lent me tools and helped me figure out why the bathroom faucets had mysteriously stopped working. 6 weeks after purchasing the house, I had converted the smallest bedroom into a livable space with a real bed, a mattress on the floor, functioning electricity in 3 rooms, and intermittent cold water. I set up a camping stove in what would eventually be the kitchen and used a 5-gallon bucket with a toilet seat as a makeshift bathroom, emptying it daily into the sewer cleanout in the yard. A humbling experience that strengthened my resolve to get proper plumbing working soon. I documented everything meticulously, taking before and after photos of each improvement. When particularly proud of a completed task, I would sometimes catch myself reaching for my phone to text my mother or sister before remembering our situation. Those moments still stung, but less sharply as weeks passed. Summer turned to fall, bringing new challenges. The patched roof began leaking again during heavy October rains. The ancient furnace failed completely just as temperatures dropped. I spent one miserably cold week sleeping in a nest of blankets before scraping together enough money to buy a better space heater. Thanksgiving approached. My first major holiday estranged from my family. I received no invitation to dinner. No calls to check if I was even alive. Despite Mrs. Hernandez's kind offer to join her family's celebration, I chose to work through the holiday, using the day off to finally install proper drywall in the main bedroom. As I worked alone on Thanksgiving Day, I allowed myself a good cry, mourning the family relationships I had lost, while simultaneously acknowledging that those relationships had always been conditional on me playing a specific role. The tears cleansed something inside me, washing away expectations that had never truly been mine. By December, my savings had dwindled to almost nothing, but the house was starting to resemble a home. I had one properly functioning bathroom, electricity throughout, and a second-hand kitchen sink installed. The roof still needed professional attention, but my patches were holding against the winter weather. I slept on a real bed frame instead of a mattress on the floor. Small victories, but significant ones. Christmas arrived, bringing a fresh wave of melancholy. I had always been the one to help my mother decorate the tree, to wrap presents meticulously, to prepare certain traditional dishes. This year, I bought myself a tiny potted pine tree and placed it in my partially renovated living room. I wrapped a single present for myself, a new set of trowels for the bathroom tile project I plan to tackle next. On Christmas Eve, I drove past my parents' house, slowing to see the familiar decorations and lights. Cars lined the driveway. Extended family was gathering as they always did. I did not stop. Instead, I returned to my drafty, half-finished house and continued working on installing kitchen cabinets I had found at a Habitat for Humanity restore. As I worked into the night, I realized something important. Despite everything, the cold, the setbacks, the financial stress, the family estrangement, I was proud of what I had accomplished. 6 months ago, this place had been condemned. Now, against all odds and expectations, it was becoming a home, my home. 8 months after purchasing my junk house, the transformation was remarkable. What had once been a condemned property was now recognizably a home. The exterior sported fresh paint in a warm sage green with crisp white trim. The sagging porch had been rebuilt with reclaimed lumber, now featuring a comfortable swing where I enjoyed my morning coffee. New windows had replaced the broken ones, allowing natural light to flood the interior. Inside, the changes were even more dramatic. I had taught myself to refinish the original hardwood floors, bringing out a warm honey color hidden beneath years of neglect. The kitchen, once a raccoon's playground, now featured cabinets rescued from various restore trips, painted a cheerful blue and topped with butcher block counters I had built myself from discarded bowling alley lanes. My renovation education had come primarily through YouTube tutorials, library books, and the generous knowledge of neighbors and new friends. I learned that I had a natural aptitude for tile work, creating a stunning mosaic bathroom floor from broken tiles collected from construction site dumpsters. I discovered I could rewire a light fixture following detailed online instructions, but that plumbing still occasionally reduced me to frustrated tears. The local building inspector, initially skeptical of my ambitious plans, became an unexpected ally. Most people would have given up months ago, he admitted during one inspection. "You've got real grit, young lady." My neighbors, seeing my dedication, began offering more substantial help. Mr. Peterson taught me how to properly mud and tape drywall seams. Mrs. Hernandez's son, landscaper, helped me clear the overgrown yard and plant a small vegetable garden. The retired contractor 3 doors down gave me a crash course in window installation when I found a set of perfectly good windows discarded behind a home improvement store. The most unexpected support came from a local journalist who knocked on my door one Saturday morning. She had heard about my project from the building inspector and wanted to write a feature for the neighborhood paper. Initially reluctant, I finally agreed to share my story. When the article appeared, From Condemned to Cozy, How One Woman Saved a Neighborhood Eyesore, I was unprepared for the response. Neighbors I had never met stopped by to introduce themselves. Local businesses offered discounts on materials. A small but growing social media following developed after I created an account documenting my renovation journey. As spring arrived, I channeled my energy into the previously neglected yard. I cleared decades of overgrowth, uncovering a charming brick pathway and the remnants of what had once been a rose garden. With donated plants from neighbors and seeds I had started indoors during winter, I transformed the jungle into an oasis of flowers, vegetables, and herbs. The garden became my therapy. After long days at the law firm, I would lose myself for hours in the simple pleasure of nurturing growing things. The rhythmic work of weeding and watering soothed the lingering hurt of family estrangement. I had not spoken to my parents or sister since that fateful dinner nearly a year ago. As my house and garden blossomed, so did the surrounding neighborhood. The brewery 3 blocks away expanded with an outdoor patio. The farm-to-table restaurant opened to rave reviews. A coffee shop and bookstore combination replaced a long-abandoned laundromat. Property values began climbing as more young professionals discovered the area's charm and affordability. My own property value had increased dramatically. What had been worth perhaps $20,000 in its condemned state was now conservatively valued at over $100,000. I received my first offer from a developer in June, $65,000 cash, no inspection required. I politely declined, though the offer was tempting. This house represented more than a financial investment. It had become the physical manifestation of my independence and resilience. Every repaired wall, every carefully painted trim board, every garden bed contained pieces of my heart and countless hours of labor. This was home in a way no other place had ever been. One evening, as I watered my thriving garden, a familiar car pulled into my driveway. My sister Amanda stepped out, looking uncertain and slightly uncomfortable in designer yoga pants and an expensive-looking tank top. I had not seen her since our family falling out, though I had occasionally glimpsed her life through mutual acquaintances as social media posts. "Nice house," she said, glancing around with poorly concealed surprise. "It looks really different." "Thanks," I replied, turning off the hose. "What brings you here?" Amanda shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "I just got back from Bali last week." I raised an eyebrow. "The retreat was 10 months ago." She looked away. "I ended up staying, teaching at a yoga studio there. It didn't work out." The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Amanda sighed. "I moved back in with Mom and Dad, just temporarily until I figure out my next steps." I nodded, unsurprised. The pattern was familiar. Amanda trying something new, it not meeting her expectations, and our parents providing a soft landing. "Do you want to come in for some tea?" I offered, deciding to be the bigger person. Inside, Amanda's eyes widened as she took in the transformation. "Wow, this looks nothing like those pictures Mom showed everyone. She said you were living in squalor." I laughed despite myself. It was pretty close to squalor for the first few months, but it's come a long way. Over tea at my handmade dining table, Amanda filled me in on the past year. The Bali retreat had been amazing, but led to her impulsively quitting her job completely and staying to become a yoga instructor at the resort. Eventually, the reality of Bali's low wages and high competition in the expatriate yoga community had sent her home broken, disillusioned. "Mom and Dad are having money problems," she confided, tracing the rim of her mug. "Dad's hours got cut again, and Mom had to get a part-time job at the mall. They had to help me with a plane ticket home." I absorbed this information silently, feeling a complex mixture of sympathy and vindication. "Your place is really coming together," Amanda said, changing the subject. "That article about you was all over Facebook. Mom saw it but pretended she didn't." As Amanda prepared to leave, she hesitated at the door. "They miss you, you know, in their way. Too stubborn to admit it, but they do." I smiled sadly. "I miss them too, but I cannot go back to how things were." After she left, I sat on my porch swing watching fireflies emerge in the summer twilight. Something told me this unexpected visit was just the beginning. 3 days after Amanda's visit, my mother appeared on my doorstep unannounced. She wore her Sunday church outfit and carried a pie that I immediately recognized as store-bought, despite the plate from her kitchen. "What a charming color," she said by way of greeting, gesturing to my sage green exterior. Her tone suggested mild surprise, as if she had expected to find me living in a cardboard box. I invited her in, maintaining a polite distance as she inspected every corner of my home. Her expression fluctuated between reluctant admiration and a search for flaws. She ran a finger along a windowsill, perhaps hoping to find dust. "You've been busy," she finally admitted, setting the pie on my kitchen counter. "It's nicer than I expected." "Thank you," I replied, not adding that her expectations had been incredibly low to begin with. We sat awkwardly in my living room, making stilted conversation about neutral topics. The weather, her church group, a cousin's new baby. She asked nothing about my renovation process or how I had managed a loan. I did not volunteer the information. Finally, she set down her untouched tea. "Amanda tells me you fixed this place up quite nicely. The neighborhood is improving too, from what I hear." I nodded, waiting for her to continue. "She also mentioned that you might have received offers to sell." Her attempt at casualness failed entirely. "A few," I acknowledged. "I'm not interested." My mother's side abandoning pretense. "Natalie, your father's hours have been reduced again. The company isn't doing well. We had to help Amanda with her plane ticket home, and you know how tight things always are." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "That retreat was a complete waste of money," she continued, frustration evident in her voice. "She spent almost all her time partying with other foreigners instead of becoming a certified instructor like she promised. Now she's home with no job, no plans, and no money." I suppressed a comment about how predictable this outcome had been. "She'll figure something out. Amanda always lands on her feet." My mother leaned forward, her eyes suddenly intense. "The thing is, if you were to sell this house now while the market is good, you could make quite a profit. Enough to help your father and me through this rough patch. We are family, after all." The audacity of her request stunned me into momentary silence. After disowning me for not funding Amanda's failed adventure, she now expected me to sell my home, the project I had poured my heart, soul, and every spare dollar into, to bail them out. "Let me understand," I said slowly. "You kicked me out of the family for buying this house instead of paying for Amanda's retreat. You said I should live like junk because I chose this place over her. You haven't checked on me once in almost a year, and now you want me to sell my home to solve your financial problems." My mother had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, but quickly rallied. "Families forgive each other, Natalie. Yes, things were said in the heat of the moment, but blood is thicker than water. We need to stick together through hard times." "Where was that family loyalty when I was sleeping in my car? Because you threw me out," I asked quietly. She flinched. "You slept in your car. Why didn't you say something?" "Would you have cared?" Or would you have told me I deserved it for choosing junk over Amanda? My mother stood abruptly. Yeah, I can see this was a mistake. You always were stubborn and unforgiving. I'm not the unforgiving one, I replied, remaining seated. I just won't be used when it's convenient and discarded when it's not. As she headed for the door, I added, for what it's worth, I forgive you. But forgiveness does not mean allowing the same patterns to continue. 2 days later, Amanda called to inform me that our mother had returned home in tears, claiming I had been cruel and ungrateful. She really thought you would help? Amanda said. So, she's been bragging to her friends about how successful you've become with your house project. Bragging? I laughed incredulously after telling everyone I was living in squalor. You know, Mom, Amanda sighed, the narrative changes depending on what she needs in the moment. The following weekend, my father showed up with a toolbox and an awkward smile. Thought you might need some help with odd jobs, he offered. Unlike my mother, my father seemed genuinely impressed by what I had accomplished.